Welcome to Magnify Your Message. Inspiration magnified.
And helping survivors understand that they can change the story and that the event happened. There's nothing we can do to change the event. It's there, it's gone, it's done. But the meaning that we put on that event is what keeps us triggering ourselves.
Welcome back to Magnify Your Message, the podcast where we uncover the stories and strategies of extraordinary people using their voices to spark change, heal hearts, and inspire action. I'm your host, Cheryl Hunter, and today we have a deeply impactful and truly courageous guest joining us. Today's guest is someone whose story will not only move you, but will remind you of the strength and resilience of the human spirit, the strength and resilience that you hold. John Michael Lander is joining us today. And let me tell you, his journey is nothing short of remarkable. In this episode, John Michael opens up about the unspeakable pain that he quietly endured as a young world class competitive athlete, the hope that he found in his healing journey, and the incredible advocacy and awareness raising work that he's doing now to empower others. When John Michael Lander and I first met, no one believed his story. Cut to today. He's been privileged to address Congress, work with the FBI, and law enforcement throughout the world, be on the Olympic Selection Committee, have his story featured by Time Magazine, and so much more. Talk about a triumph. I am so honored to have him here with us today. So grab a cozy spot, settle in, and let's dive into this incredible conversation. John Michael Lander, you are so damn inspiring. I cannot wait to take this journey with you today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Woo!
Woo!
So excited.
Same here. John Michael, who are you? What do you provide for the world?
That's a question I ask myself every morning I wake up. Who am I as I look in the mirror? I'm John Michael Lander, and I'm a former Olympic contender and a sex abuse and trafficked victim. As a 14-year-old Olympic-bound athlete, the adults that were entrusted in my training groomed and trafficked me into silence, causing the most exciting time of my life to be filled with shame and guilt. And yet, during all this time, I was able to still win gold medals at the Norway and Danish Cups. And since then, I have created a voice for the voiceless, for those who are not able to speak up and talk, especially athletes, male athletes. And since we've just had the Olympics, we've seen a lot of that happening right now. That's a little bit of who I am and what I do.
Wow. I don't want to read too much into this, but I would imagine as a man, as a young boy previously, as a young man and now as a man, it hasn't been an easy journey to share this, have anyone hear you, and everything that goes with that.
Absolutely right. I didn't break my silence until about 5 years ago. And it took, I was a teacher at a high school teaching English, and it took a sophomore boy that came into my classroom to share his story with me. And as I learned more about his story and finding out that he had this older man who was 35 paying for his bills and his groceries, that's what set me off. And then I went to report it to the assistant principal, and she says, there's nothing we can do about that. We already know about it, and his mother and grandmother are aware of it. So just realized this has been something that's happened with him a lot. So at that point, I realized that there was not very much room for me to move forward at the school, and I did resign. And that's when everything started to, I guess, unravel. Pandora's box was open for me. And while I was dealing with all that, I found myself going into a deep depression because I didn't understand what this all was because I had shoved it down for so long. And I remember going in the garage one day after writing a note to my partner and saying goodbye to the two Boston Terriers. I sat in the car and I started to inhale the exhaust fumes. And it was during that time that I said, wait a second, this is not fair for my partner to find me like this. He didn't ask for this. He didn't do this. This isn't his fault. You can't do this. So I got myself out, threw myself into the house, and I cried, one of those really ugly cries. And I said I was going to break my silence. I was going to do something about this and share it. And then I did my TED Talk called An Athlete's Silence. And from there, I created An Athlete's Silence, which is, an organization that helps athletes who have been sexually abused to be able to come forward and speak.
So when you say you broke your silence, do you mean that you never tried when you were younger to say anything to anyone?
Well, I did try once. I tried to tell my mother, but I probably need to go back and set that up for you so you can understand a little bit more of that
Please.
whole story. When I was 14, I took eighth at the Junior Olympics in Lincoln, Nebraska, which was a pretty big deal. I came from a farm town. And so I was all of a sudden thrust into the limelight of, possible Olympians because, there we are, 14 years old, eighth in the Junior Olympics. So a lawyer read about it in the newspaper and contacted my mother. And so they started to meet and have dinner or drinks or whatever they were talking, however they met. And he basically told her that he had a group of professional men that would help me get to the Olympics and get a college scholarship at the same time. And so my mother thought this was a great idea. And so he kept talking to her. And he said that all the professionals, I call them professionals, would be able to help the family out. And so any job that they were doing, like a medical doctor or an eye doctor, what would help the family out if she made sure that I was at a certain place at a certain time and ready to go. She thought this was a great idea. And so she basically signed a contract with him. And it wasn't until after she signed the contract did he ever meet me. And so then he started to take me out to have dinners and talk to me and basically share with me that these professional men were the only way I was going to go to the Olympics because my parents didn't have the means to pay for it all the time for the best coach, to go to the best competitions and all this stuff because diving is pretty expensive. And so I listened and he kept saying that this would be helping your family. This is an opportunity not only for you, but for the family. And I know that your sister had an accident, a sledding accident, and needs reconstructive surgery on her chin. And I have a doctor that's willing to do all that for free. Now, all you have to do is make sure that your grades are good, you do really well in competitions, and you make sure that the professionals are happy. That's it. So I thought, okay, this is an opportunity. I was going to get my Olympic dream will come true, and I'm helping my family at the same time. So I signed a contract with him. And within the contract, I was not allowed to tell anybody what was happening. I wasn't allowed to go to any adult and say, "Hey, this is weird. This is what." So I said, "Okay, fine." But I do remember on my 16th birthday, the day of my 16th. So this has been 2 years now. The car came and my mother was ready for me to get. Come on, you got to go. And I said, "No, I'm not going." I had had it. That was it. And so I said, "I'm not going to go." And she says, "Well, why? He came all the way out here. This is rude. You can't be rude. You've got to go." Of course, I didn't know that the pressure she was under, that if I didn't go, what would happen. And later on, I found out that if I had not gone, the lawyer would have sued my parents for all the money and everything that the gifts that these professionals had given to her. Then they would have taken the children out and put them in foster homes. I mean, this is basically fear factor to her. So she's sweating it. So I'm saying, okay, I'm not going. She said, well, why? And I said, he touches me. And I thought, this is it. I finally have broken my silence. I have someone I can trust. She's going to believe me. And for a moment, I thought she did. Her face got really concerned, and then her lips got really thin. And I remember, and then she looked at me really funny, and she reached around and slapped me across the face. And she said, it's not nice to make up lies about people. This is a prominent man in the community. He's helping a lot of people, and he's helping our family. It is your job. She said, it is your job to go and make us proud. And when you come back, you can tell me everything that went on.
Mm.
So I went. I figured if my mom wasn't going to believe me, no one else would. So that was the first time and really the only time I told anyone. But I do remember that in high school, because this all happened during my high school years, I started to give indicators to like the teachers because I figured that if an adult asked me, I had to give an answer. I had to respond back because it was only right. That's how I was raised. You don't lie to an adult.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, what can I do? And I remember I was one of those kids who always had to dress impeccably. I don't care where I was. If there was dirt, I changed. So I just couldn't do it. But for a whole week, I wore the biggest and baggiest clothes I could and never changed. And I thought, someone's going to ask me what's going on. Not one teacher did. And then I decided, well, I'll make this even worse. I won't shower for a whole week. And I remember overhearing my mother saying, "Oh, don't worry about that. It's probably, it's a teenage thing. He's rebellion. He's been a rebellion and but he's swimming. He's in the pool every day. So he just smells like chlorine. So it's no big deal." So that failed. And then the final thing that I did is I started to drop the F bomb. And I'm sure, Cheryl, one of those kids who, whenever they cuss, it just doesn't fit and
Right.
everyone laughs at you. I was that kid. It just didn't work. And I would drop it as loud as I could in the hallway, in the classroom, in the locker room, at the pool, anywhere. And no one asked me what was up. So that's where I was at the whole time. I felt I was alone. I felt like nobody believed me. Nobody's going to understand what I was going through. And if this was really happening, just like my mother said, I must have caused it. It was my fault. So I carried it all on my shoulders.
Something that I've heard when I've done interviews myself, because similarly, I never shared about the kidnapping for I mean, way more than a decade. People would say, "Well, but why?" With that look in their eyes. Why would anyone hide that? And I mean, I just saw the look on your face says it all. It's that the shame runs so deep. The more I've worked with survivors over the years now, I I hear that over and over again. It's a very common phenomenon to lay people, so to speak, outside of this who haven't been victimized in these ways. It seems implausible that anyone would hold that back. But when you're working to just keep it together at all, the prospect of reliving it via speaking it, or in your case, not being believed or being punished, how in the hell did you keep it together in life?
I've been thinking about this ever since I broke my silence for the past 5 years. And I think one of the things that keeps coming back into play with me is the fact that um, besides owning the fact that it was my fault, I was constantly told that nobody would believe me. Um, One of the other abusers was my coach, actually, and he would take me up to the university and practice platform with um, so many times a week and stuff like that. So we'd have overnights together, and when we were overnight, these things would happen. And he basically started it out as saying that I've never felt this way about anyone before, and especially a guy. So we can't tell anybody because nobody will really understand this, and it will ruin everything. And if it comes out, nobody will want to work with you again. Your Olympic dream will be over with. Your college scholarship will be gone, and you will never find another coach. You might as well just give it up. And it was like, but it was done in such a way that it was coming from a caring heart, because he also told me that he understood about the professionals because he knew about it. He didn't explain that, but he knew about it. So I was like, okay, you're my safe haven. You're going to help me out. That's what I thought. But also during this whole time, everything was being normalized, if that makes sense. The fact that the coach would touch me, he would touch me in front of, at a meet. He'd put his arms around me and he'd adjust my body and just tell me that this is what's going on. And so it became very like this is just what it takes to become an elite athlete.
Wow.
And so I started normalizing it all. It didn't mean anything. It's okay. And I get the same questions all the time. Why didn't you fight back? Why didn't why you're not a real man unless you fought back? A real man wouldn't let that happen. But there's this whole thing in this dichotomy about power and stuff. People who are in power over you that can ruin your life, you do things sometimes if you feel like you can't do anything else. It's a survival method. And so that became my survival method for 4 years. That's how I got through everything. And then I kind of disassociated myself a lot. When things would happen, I would pretend they weren't, or I'd think something else. And so I just get through it and get quickly. I started realizing as I got older, like my junior and senior year, I found ways to take control back in a bit of a way. I know that I'd be in the car with one of the professionals, and I thought if I come on to the professional, one or two things will happen. This will be over with quicker, or I'll be dropped off at the next corner. And that's exactly what happened. Because a lot of these professionals had children my age, and they were normally married. And so once I started coming on and saying, "Oh my God, I just think I could spend the rest of my life with you," that line right there would really flip them out.
Oh, God.
And many times it turned into abuse. I mean, where they physically beat me because oh, how could I dare say that to them? And then it would be over with. And then I'd be, dropped off and I'd have to find my way home. So things like that would work. And then the other thing I found out that is if it progressed to the point that I had no other choice, that I had to go through with it, if I can make them climax first, it would be over with. And then I would tell myself that it really wasn't sex because I did not. That was my control method. And a lot of times it just was, you never knew what was going to happen after it was over with. You didn't know, is this going to be, you're going to drive me back home? You're going to make me find my own way? Or are you going to beat the crap out of me? So it had one or three things every time.
These supposed upstanding members of the community, are you still living nearby this area? Have you ever gone on to see any of them since?
Fortunately, I would say most of the people that I was dealing with have probably passed away. I do know the coach is living 2 towns away, but I have never connected back with him. Although he did befriend me on Facebook. He reached out to me and
Ah,
wanted to be my friend. And I was like, why? So that
right.
was kind of
Are
an
we
odd thing.
friends? Right.
Yeah, let's be friends. So that was kind of strange. But again, it's just no, I've never gone back to that because when I decided to break my silence about 5 years ago, these professionals, when I was 17 at the old 18 at the oldest, they were already in their 60s. And so they're no longer with us. And also, I just want to jump back real quick about why not telling anybody in the elite athlete world. It's such a small community, and people know everything basically. And it's really one of those things that people talk and they're like that, but we're always constantly told that there are five other athletes that could take our place. If you can't deal with this and you can't handle what's going on, if it's too hot in the kitchen, get out. We've got some other people come in and take your place. So we're always worried about someone doing that. I was constantly told that my other teammates were jealous of me because I was going to all these international meets and they weren't yet. And they didn't like me. And so it was built around to create an isolation around me. So it's one of those things that's hard for people to understand, especially people who are not athletes, to understand that the athletic world is such a small nucleus of itself, and that they have their own jargon and their own way of speaking and their own rules, that you adapt. And so you start to normalize everything that goes on because that's what you're supposed to do. And like they say, 1 out of 4 females and 1 out of 6 males are sexually abused before the age of 18. And they also say that victims know, like 90-80% of victims know who their abuser are. And then in the sports world, it's probably
Mhm.
higher than that because we know them, we deal with them every day.
Look, it's anecdotal, but if the two of us here didn't speak about it, didn't report, Nothing was ever formally reported. I trust the organizations that are putting these statistics out, but I think it's wildly underreported. I mean, you work with men survivors. How many of them are actually saying something, with it being as stigmatized as it is to be a male who was sexually assaulted or abused? They're probably not speaking about it. And I can say from the hundreds of sexual assault victims with whom I've worked, it's commonplace to hide it and never report, never tell anyone. So I can't imagine that those numbers aren't dramatically higher than that.
I totally agree with you. And I think it depends on who you speak to and who is putting that information out there, those statistics out there, and who are the people that they're talking to. Many times there was a real big push after the 1 in 4 and 1 in 6 came out. They're saying, "No, no, no, that's not true. It's 1 in 4 and 1 in 13 males." And it's like, how do you know that? Where's that coming from? And who were your studies? Well, the study was mostly women that was in that. So of course it's going to be different. It's going to be different anywhere you go. And I think that's something that's really crazy. And our society has made it so difficult for male survivors to even speak up because of all of the, accusations. Oh, then you must be gay, you must be this, you must have wanted it. A real man, can't be raped. You would fight back. All these things. So we don't talk about it.
It's just it's haunting. So you say, "Hey, I'm gonna speak up. I am going to not only claim my own voice, but I am now going to be a voice for the voiceless." You do a TED Talk, you create an athlete silence, but that's not enough for you. You wanna be a voice for every voiceless individual who has experienced this. What do you decide to do then? How do you decide to get this message out?
Oh, first of all, I didn't know how. I really did not know where I was going to do or what I was going to do about it. I did the TED Talk. I wrote 2 books that came out about my story. They were all out there, but nothing was happening, and, I mean, I would get, like, keynote speakers at this organization or that organization over there, but I was too afraid to even ask for, money for it because I thought, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing." And so it was just this matter of trying to find out, "How do I do this?" And, I stumbled across you, to be honest with you, and, you came up on a Facebook page, and I went, "Whoa, who's this?" And I started realizing that maybe if I could get media, then I can, um, certify myself and make it sure everybody knows that I'm telling the truth. And I thought that that might be a way to get myself edified and believed. And so I started doing that, going through what you shared with me and your encouragement and everything has helped that. And then I started getting, stuff like Time Magazine and NBC and ABC and all these people speaking to me. And that's what really started to let me realize that maybe my voice is needed to be heard. Because I think that was my biggest fear, that nobody would believe me, even into my adulthood. I still believe and I will go through times when I'm getting ready to do an interview or do a presentation that I will totally go into freak mode saying, "No one's gonna believe this."
I'm gonna
And I've
be
had many people
slapped
tell me,
across the face,
"Yeah, oh,
so to
yeah."
speak.
And I've had people call me and tell me, "Why are you doing this? That you're making this up. This isn't real. Why would this be real?" And my response is, "Why would I make it up?" With everything, the stigmas of our society and everything, why will I stand in front of thousands of people and say that I was abused and trafficked? Why would I do that? I don't need that kind of publicity. That's not the publicity I ever wanted to be. I never wanted to be the survivor or the victim. I want to be this thriver person that people can say, "Oh my God, that did happen. That's part of his life, but look what he's doing now." And I knew that I couldn't do that unless I had major media behind me. And people started saying, "Oh, okay. Now we can believe you," because people will believe you if Time Magazine believes you.
May I share something about our very first conversation?
Yes.
So, you and I spoke. and you shared your story, and you'd shared how nobody had believed you, and you've been told that no one would believe you, and now you believe that, and yet you know you've got this massive difference to make. And you shared how you'd wanted to get rid of or throw away or even sell your gold medals because they represented nothing to you but pain. And I muted the phone and just wept listening to you speak and thought, this just cannot be. And I just thought, if there's nothing else I ever do, I have to see this man have a voice in the world. And it was not long after I'd said, you know what, for years, my work was helping people overcome adversity. And I thought, once I'd really gotten my message out in a big way, I thought, you know what, there's a whole industry dedicated to helping people overcome adversity. I'm going to step back and leave that to the mental health professionals. There's no one out there that helps mission-driven experts become renowned by the world so they can serve at the highest level. And if it took me 10 years and I already was a TV writer,
Mhm.
people don't stand a snowball's chance in hell. And God love you. You have gone on to so far exceed anything, any imaginings that I could have ever had. I know your level of humility, so if you don't mind, may I share some of the things that you've been doing and then augment it in any way that you would? Please humor all of us, but, I know you're so humble, but you've gone on to address Congress. You've been featured by George Clooney in his upcoming documentary about Ohio State. You've been working with the FBI. You've just addressed the United Nations. I mean, good God. It's not just the media edification and the Time magazines and things like this, but you've gone on and doing media all over the world. But these global organizations are now coming to you as not only a voice, but the voice, as not only a source, but the source. And God, what is the most rewarding thing to you about all of this?
I promised myself I was not going to get choked up at this, but the most rewarding thing, and it's what keeps me going, it was on that call with you. And you said, I believe you and I hear you. That's all I needed. And when I go into certain things that are really tough, like having to deal with going back to the lawyer and starting all over and all that stuff, that's the voice I hear. I believe you. I hear you. And there are many times, and I'm sure you feel this way too, Cheryl, when your survivorship, if that's what you want to call it, precedes you and becomes the identity that you are, and you're saying, I'm more than that. I'm so much more than this. And you saw that, and you said that's just a part of you. What else are you able to do? And that's what opened up my mind to so many other things. That's what I think really got me to be able to speak to the FBI, the United Nations, Capitol Hill, Unitas, or the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking, and all these places, was that there's something more to me. And then I started really looking at what happened to me. And then I started seeing things similar. What happened at the USA Gymnastics, what happened to me at Ohio State, what happened at Michigan State, what happened at the Boy Scouts, what happens in the Catholic Church. I started realizing that there's a similar theme. And with your help, I coined the phrase predatory grooming trifecta, which is where the predator will groom the institution first and get their protection behind them. Then they'll groom the parents to get their support. And then only then would they go after the child. So I decided that there was something that had to be done for that. And so I created the predatory internet grooming, which I call PIG, which is to help
Perfect.
parents and yeah, which to help parents and children understand how horrific and terrible this epidemic is. And it is becoming a big epidemic. I mean, what is it? 500,000 predators are trying to reach your children every day online, and people are not even aware of that. And parents, like only about 15% of parents know what their children are doing online, and they
Wait,
kind of just
what
give it.
percent?
Yeah, about 15% of parents
One
know.
five.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
so a lot of times other parents just think it's not going to happen. It's not happening in my house because they're in their bedroom, but the bedroom's door is closed. And so it's all happening within their own dwellings. And so from
Wow.
there, I created this thing I hope someday will get to take off. It's called the Pig Patrol, which I hope to instill into high schools and universities, even and even elementaries. And the New Jersey Coalition of Human Trafficking has picked it up and are working at it and looking at it. And it's to help parents, teachers, and children understand what's going on and have a safe space that they can speak about what they're experiencing,
Mm.
and that they could be heard and that they could be, taught what to do.
So
So
where
all of that is stemming from you saying, I believe you and I hear you. So thank you.
Well, John Michael, I thank you for the generous acknowledgement, but let's face it, this was already there within you. It's just an environment inside of which you could be who you are, which is an extraordinary victor, a triumphant human being who is dedicated to making a difference. So, John Michael, where have you shared or instructed any of your educational frameworks, whether it's uh, predatorial grooming trifecta or pig or the different iterations of pig? To whom have you been instructing and where have you been sharing these?
Well, the the predatory grooming trifecta was really a big deal during the Olympics with the bylaws of the athletes and helping them understand and getting their rights, the athletes' rights. So that was really a big deal. So that was exciting. I think also with the Safe Sports International, not Safe Sports USA, because they're still very reluctant here, but Safe Sports International has picked it up and has shared how this process is happening. Unitas in New York has really shared the fact of this is can happen in schools, it can happen in churches, it can happen in,
Mm,
like, again, Boy Scouts, any type of sports, even grassroots sports. Very young kids, this can be happening. Also, the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking really picked it up and started using it. And again, the Army of Survivors, when they first started, really used a lot of it as well. But those are like the major players that have picked it up. The predatory internet grooming is still being looked at, but again, they're like, well, how do we know that this is real? Do you have any data behind it? And I'm saying, look at the data; it's right there on our internet. Look at what's happening. And again, so that's where the United Nations has come in play, the Capitol Hill. I got to share a little bit about that down there. And those things are starting to slowly happen. I have a couple politicians that reach out and ask me, would I speak on their behalf and using these ideas, these things that I'm coming up with because they want to support them.
it's funny that you
We
characterize it as things are slowly happening and every single week, and quite literally. I listen to you sharing where you've been asked to speak and where in the world they've been presenting your work and which media platform has featured you today. And so, I mean, I get it. There's a big commitment that you have to ending this worldwide. And in the face of that commitment, it can seem as though the progress is slow, but I can tell you from the other side, watching on with awe and inspiration, this is moving at a lightning pace. So
Well, thank you. I'm sure you know it as well in your experiences. It doesn't seem like it's moving at all sometimes. But there's moments where I feel this really urge not to want to talk. I don't want to share this story anymore. I don't want to be that. I'm so much more. And I think that's where I get stuck sometimes because people just want to hear the gory details a lot, you know? And I'm like, and I've actually said this many times. I've said, there's more to me than just letting this happen, because they want me to take the responsibility that I allowed it to happen. And I guess there's a truth in that. I'm still reluctant to believe that I chose this. Um,
can I stop for one moment? Hell no, there isn't. One of my first interviews ever, may I just hijack for a
Please.
moment here? It's somebody that I had been on CNN with multiple times got their own TV show, and the first interview on the first pilot episode, they brought me in to share my story and then immediately switched it to indicting the victim. I don't call myself that, but it was like victim shaming kind of thing. Like, at one point, did you think this was a stupid idea? Did you really think this was a smart idea to go with them? Were you aroused by these men? Like, what? Are you kidding me? What next? What was I wearing? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
seriously, had you been drinking? No and no, but it's just it's reprehensible. And the collective conversation out there is by started by the predators is victim shaming, that it causes silence. You experience this firsthand. It is incredibly common. I'm sorry, you didn't ask me to come to your defense and stand up like a
No,
big
I'm
sister
glad you
here.
did.
I'm like, no, that is not true. Hell
But it's
no.
also very true because I think a lot of times those who attack like that are one, uncomfortable with what's being talked about, or may have some type of experience themselves and has not dealt with it,
Yeah.
and it's just bringing up things for them. And so
Yes.
they're trying to push it away and just say, "Well, you must have did it because I would never have done that." And
Right.
I think that's one of the things that really hit hard with me. And a lot of my predators were therapists. So going into an office to a therapist would be totally triggering, because it always became about something else. And I really had a hard time with that. I did find one therapist who was an older woman who thought outside the box. I called her a tree hugger, and she was really the first person who really started to move me forward. But then I found the Self-Talk Institute, and it's a way about changing your mind because I feel as I've been doing all of this work, as a survivor, I created up lies and stories just to be able to get through the day. And I would make up these horrible stories because I wasn't worth it. This, but I had to find a way to make it tangible for me to get through my day. And I found out that I was creating all these lies and these false stories within myself. And I realized that if I could change those and start removing those thoughts, I could change my life. And that's basically the first group of people that really helped me. And there was a woman by the name of Tracy Wright who was there, and she says, we can start right now. And we don't need even talk about what happened in the past. We talk about right now. Why do you feel like you're not worth it? And it just was about hearing my voice and what I was changing and changing that, which helped me start seeing these predatory grooming trifectas or the pig program or pig patrol and all that stuff was about helping someone else. And it took it off of me and saying that, oh, I'm not worthy of this, but I'm helping someone else. So it changed the direction of thinking. And going through, Magnify Your Message, which is another one where the mindset was always about what are you got to help the people that you're serving? Focus on that. And that was all the things that changed in my head. I've become so passionate with self-talk that I became a coach and a trainer, and I'm helping survivors understand that they can change the story and that the event happened. There's nothing we can do to change the event. It's there, it's gone, it's done. But the meaning that we put on that event is what keeps us triggering ourselves. And that's when I started thinking, okay, I can share my story. It's not about me anymore. It's about how can I help these people who are not able to talk about it? If they can hear the story and say, well, if he did it, then maybe I can get help. And it's all about just getting the help for them.
Just beautiful. Where can people learn more about you, John Michael, and the work that you do? How can we get in touch with you?
Well, I have an athletesilence.com, and I also have johnmichaellander.com. And the athlete silence is more about the survival side and the abuse and the voice for the voiceless, where the johnmichaellander.com is more about the coaching and helping to change your life. And you can go from one to the other and it works both ways that way.
I'll make sure we've got all of that in the liner notes of the episode. As we begin to wrap it up, what is the gift that you'd like to leave people with today?
Hope, hope. I think someone that you and I both know very well has really also helped change my life, Reverend Jesse Bradley, and about his whole view of hope. And I listened to him and I read his book, and everything is about hope is always there. And it always was there, even during the time of this horrific 4 years of my life. And I remember thinking that when the abuse was happening, sometimes I always thought that I was alone, that nobody would believe me. But sometimes when the abuse was actually happening, I felt like there was someone with me, which is weird, I know. But I just felt like I was not alone. And it was like, just everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. Maybe that was just me telling myself that. I don't know. But hope is there all the time. And if we look for the hope, it's there. We may have to, like remove some things, but it's waiting for us to acknowledge it. And we can change our lives. We really can.
Mm, what a blessing. What a gift. Thank you for sharing your heart and your story with us today.
Thank you.
What a powerful, thought provoking conversation with John Michael Lander. His courage, resilience, and dedication to creating change are truly inspiring. If there's one thing that we can take away from today, it's that our voices, no matter how silenced they may have once been, have the power to heal, educate, and create a ripple effect of transformation. John Michael's story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope can lead the way. And by redefining our own internal narrative, we can reclaim our power. As always, thank you for tuning in to Magnify Your Message. Until next time, I'm Cheryl Hunter reminding you to embrace your story, share it boldly, and keep magnifying your message to the world. Take good care, and I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with everyone that you feel it would benefit. Thank you in advance. And when you're ready to share your story and your work with the world, I can help. Visit CherylHunter.com to learn how. I am Cheryl Hunter, and until next time, know that your message has the power to change the world.